There's some clips floating around. It's Barack Obama talking to his wife and his brother-in-law for an hour and 20 minutes. If you didn't know, the former First Lady now has a podcast with her brother, Craig Robinson.
Why does he show up on this particular program?
Because Michelle asked him to.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Today, our episode is going to be about a different podcast episode. So if you...
A podcast about a podcast.
Podcast about a podcast.
Podcastception.
And it's an our podcast.
Hey, bro, we heard you like podcasts in your podcast, so we put a podcast in your podcast.
But we want you to listen to this podcast.
Yes, and don't listen to the other one. So, the other one is IMO with Michelle Obama. If you didn't know, the former First Lady now has a podcast with her brother, Craig Robinson. The reason this is the only one we've listened to of hers, and probably the only one we ever will listen to, is because she had Barack on. And so it's Barack Obama talking to his wife and his brother-in-law for an hour and 20 minutes. And there's some clips floating around there, and we'll get into that. But first, make sure to go check out patriotpostshop.com and buy some merchandise. You can get this shirt, the This Is My Pride flag with the American flag shirt on it. We'll have the link up there. Go to the patriotpostshop.com and enter the code PopCon on checkout to get 10% off. That's one of the best ways to support us. The best way to support us is to go to patriotpost.us and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. It'll come out every day, Monday through Friday at noon. It's right. It's free. All right, guys. So why did we decide to cover this episode of Michelle and Barack talking, which they're none of our favorite people?
I think there was some controversy over a claim that Barack Obama said every man should have a gay best friend. It's not quite what he said.
No,
but that kind of went around, the social media.
Well, the clip of his comment is what's kind of doing the rounds.
Yeah.
And it's a wrong comment. He's wrong in what he's saying, but it's not egregious the way social media would have you
The
believe.
context helps make it make more sense.
Yes. Especially coming from Barack Obama.
It's almost like you should hear all of what somebody has to say.
Are you saying context
Yes.
matters?
Context matters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't automatically assume the
Missing
worst.
context.
Incredible. Wow. Okay, that is one of the things. And the other thing is people have rumored for months now that Barack and Michelle are getting divorced. And so right at the beginning of this episode, when Barack is going to sit down, they make jokes.
Barack Obama, can you join us?
Wait, you guys like each other?
Oh yeah, really? Huh?
That's so
The
nice.
rumor mill. It's my husband, y'all.
She took me back.
Now don't start.
I can't.
It was touch and go for a while.
Those clips are doing the rounds as well. And so people are like, see, they are getting divorced. And it's like, well...
This is the first time he's appeared on her podcast, I believe.
Yes.
And that's why it went viral.
Right.
Yeah, it's
that's
viral.
That's viral.
Yeah.
We'll give it. As the tiny little podcast we are, we'll say, fine, you can be viral.
Yeah. When, they wouldn't even think twice about us ever.
Right.
But that's okay.
So why does he show up on this particular program?
Because Michelle asked him to.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the real reason.
What are they discussing, though? I guess that's
Yeah.
what we should get to. That's what actually mattered to us.
It's what their episode is about, and it's not completely crazy. They have a question from Emma in San Francisco.
Okay, I want to hear from Emma.
And let's hear from Emma so we can dive into this topic.
Hi, Michelle and Craig. I have 3 younger brothers and am a new mom to a 1-year-old little boy. What can we do to change the fact that we raise our girls and we love our boys? There is so much dialogue on raising strong, independent women, but how can we raise emotionally intelligent, competent men? I am deeply concerned by the ideology promoted to my younger brothers online. I want to raise a young man who sees through those ideas. How can we energize the discussion around raising young men that want to change these oppressive and even violent dynamics?
She is concerned by the online content her brothers are being fed and wants to raise her son to see through that BS. And she's asking Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and Craig Robinson, how do I raise a child to see through that crap?
She also says, quote, we raise our girls and we love our boys, which was interesting that she made that distinction.
And we don't know who this Emma person is.
No.
Just a mom writing in from San Francisco. That's all we know.
Just the comment itself, the way it was written, seemed a little bit hysterical. Oh no, he's listening to Jordan Peterson or Charlie Kirk kind of thing.
Probably,
and
yeah.
What can I do? And it made me think of, I'm just going to bring this in real quick because it doesn't actually tie in that closely, but it's just funny. I found this article from today.com. I guess that's USA Today. And just the first paragraph is really funny. All my life, I've prided myself on blurring gender lines, but when my young son started to gravitate toward the very things I'd shunned, I wasn't sure what to do. And then after turning 2 years old, my son Avishai started demanding that he only wears tractor shirts. And my mind spiraled into darkness. I catastrophized worst case scenarios, imagining a world where he fell for everything stereotypically manly. So that's kind of what I was hoping this episode would be. I was hoping they would be like, yeah, don't let him play with tractors, dress him up in pink tutus. Not that I want that for any little boy, but I was hoping Barack Obama would be stupid enough to say that. Unfortunately, he's a smart guy.
Yeah. It turns out that at least what he's talking about sounds like he and Michelle are probably pretty good parents.
Yeah.
And at least 85% of it is fairly good advice for raising boys, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what I came away with was the reality that in some ways, we talk about this sometimes in politics, that the two sides, and they have two visions for what they think the solutions are for the problems. This is one of the examples of both sides kind of recognize this is the problem. The only question is, what is the solution to the problems? That's where the disagreements often happen. And so it was a bit refreshing for me to hear a thoughtful conversation that wasn't disparaging or overtly political or antagonistic toward one side, recognizing, look, this is an issue, and basically we're both seeing the same thing.
Yeah. And even their solutions are pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
You could do a lot worse than following these prescriptions.
Yeah.
They're finally recognizing an issue, which is that young boys and young men are being left behind. They're being ignored. They're just not having the attention lavished upon them that young women are.
Yes.
Interestingly on that, I just saw a post on X about how the premium for having a degree versus not having a college degree for men has disappeared. You're just as likely to be unemployed with a degree as without if you're a young man. If you're a woman, there's still a benefit to having a degree.
Towards the end of the show, Barack specifically talks about that male identity connected with jobs and being a provider, which is a thing, and the loss of jobs that has happened in the past, like maybe 20 years, and men having less opportunities, and then exactly what you said, women being more and more commonly like a breadwinner or having more opportunities, having the degree or having the job opportunities that they're just not getting. And his prescription was a little bit different, but he mentions that there's this connection that men have with being providers, and that is kind of in flux right now.
Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it is interesting. They kind of repeatedly, all three of them, I think, make the point that we want to raise men to be strong and capable.
Now that's the first sensible idea I've heard all day.
I know.
Which is...
It's not
It's
something
just
you hear
surprising.
from the left,
Right.
really at all.
Well, I think Obama was very clear in his definitions of what he meant. I mean, they listed out what were their kind of sources of understanding of what manhood is. And they listed numerous ones. They talked about like a hard worker, like consistently working. They talked about a provider. They talked about a protector, in which Barack clearly tied that with being strong.
And he was talking about things like you should do the things like pull the chair out for the girl or hold the
Chivalry.
door, which are just basic like
manners.
and basic manners, yes, and that's what they say. But it's also these are basic male coded manner things that up until I think very recently you would have been like pulling teeth to get someone on the left admit that these are good things.
I think this is part of the problem that has occurred with the boiling down of positions where it becomes very like somebody on the left will hold this view, and everything is tied up in a tight bow. Like, women don't need men opening doors for them. Well, because we've heard some wild-eyed feminists say that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But does that represent actually the view of everybody on the left, of all progressives? No. So I think that's part of the disconnect here, and maybe even part of the division, is because actually most people, left and right, actually believe that there are kind of these gender roles, even though they might not even use that term, but they see manners are good. Being a strong protector for a male is good. Having a sense of humor, getting along with others. That was the big thing they really highlighted, getting along with others. And one of the things that was, to me, the most refreshing, they hit on it over and over again. Guys need to be around other men to understand what it means to be a man, and different men. And this is where that comment where Obama talks about the gay professor comes in. What he was saying was, and I appreciate what he was saying, even though I might disagree with the gay aspect of it. Right. What he was saying was, men come in a bunch of different shapes and a bunch of different personalities, etc. But they're all men, and it's good to understand that the variety, you could say, that exists amongst men, just like it exists amongst women.
Yeah. Just to hit the caveat, of course, what Obama's saying is you should have a gay man in your young boy's life so that if he comes out as gay, he has that example to follow. Don't do that. That's bad. Right. But in general, you should have men who are, artsy and men who are super athletic in your child's life so they can see, I could do either of these things.
The idea is multiple male role models.
Right. Yes.
And then, of course, multiple male spaces. Craig, which is Michelle's brother, talked about growing up, his dad would take him to work or take him to the barber shop or places that...
The record store.
The record store. In that context, those were male spaces.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have lost a lot of that. And I particularly tend to harp on the Boy Scouts because that is one big example of where that's been lost for sure.
Why didn't that come up in this conversation?
I know. Yeah.
Well, I think it's just because none of these people have any involvement with the organization. It's probably
That's true. There was the big elephant in the room for Michelle in particular. I thought she's only raised girls.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and Brack has too.
And he admitted that he thought raising a son would have been hard for him.
Right.
Especially because he came from, a single mother raising him.
And that's where I wanted to get to. Is Brack, unlike Craig apparently had his dad in his life, Brack did not have his dad in his life, and he says that up front. And he was raised by a teenage mom when he was born. That's significant. I guess his grandparents helped raise him. But
he did have male role models.
Right, but he describes having to go search out how to be a man, that is a real problem for men raised by single mothers.
And a lot of boys in America face that today.
A lot of boys. I think in some communities it's a majority.
Over and over again, the answer has been male role models. You have to have good male role models. The whole Million Man March back in the 90s was based on this concept. Young men need older, wiser men to direct and guide them. They need father figures. This is not a new discovery. This is something that's been around. Everybody's known for millennia, honestly. In one sense, it's kind of funny that, okay, they're finally recognizing this. Yes, young men need men. There was a number of interesting things pointed out that I think Michelle wouldn't have come to without Barack pointing to it. And when he pointed to specifically an event he had when he was like 11 or 12, and he got left at the airport to fly by himself back across the country, and his mom had forgotten to give him his passport.
I think it was an international flight.
International flight.
He flew to Indonesia or something like that.
And he had to problem solve to figure out, how do I get to my mom, because no cell phones or anything, so that I can catch her in time and get my passport, get back to the flight, etc. And he talked about being self-sufficient. I think that is huge, especially for both sexes, but especially for men in a certain context. And boys need to learn that problem-solving skill.
Sure.
And men can help direct that and are better, honestly, at helping boys see that than are women. Because sometimes I think I see, and I've experienced, the emotional impact that a very trying situation can have and how the two sexes express that. for me personally, it's better if I don't have a sudden overcoming panic when I'm facing a difficult challenge, because all of a sudden my brain starts to go into problem solve mode. Yep. Okay, I need to think through this, and I don't need the distraction of over emotionalism.
Yeah.
I think that's true for many men and boys, just in general. I think it's a general trait.
It's fair to say that's the masculine response.
Yeah, and so that needs to be developed. And I think what Obama was talking about, Barack Obama was talking about, was how he was given or afforded, even just by a situation, the opportunity to develop those skills. Mm-hmm. Every boy needs that. The whole point, part of the whole point of the Boy Scouts is that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Learning to take responsibility for themselves and others is at the root of, I think, this kind of developing boys and men. And that has been robbed from a lot of men growing up, or a lot of boys growing up right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of sit down, shut up, and you are toxic and your natural inclinations are somehow bad. And
you're being graded usually in a classroom on the same standard as the girls. So you're supposed to all react the same way to things. And it's just not factual. On the note you were having about kind of a crisis situation, when you're in a crisis, I don't know, I assume most people have been in some kind of minor crisis in their life. I have found pretty much as a rule of thumb, the guys are much less likely to scream and panic than the girls. That's just the way it works. That's how it's been in my life. And it's been significantly important that the guys were not overreacting and screaming and crying, because they were able to, in one case, climb under the smoke and use a fire extinguisher to put out the fire, because they weren't screaming and panicking. They were focusing on solving the issue. That's just the way men and women should work. We shouldn't react the same way to everything, because it's not helpful. For women, it is helpful to scream, because often they're not physically going to be able to overpower a threat. But if they scream, then someone who can might show up.
Yeah, and I don't know about you two, but I felt that one of the elements of the conversation, and there was truth to it, but I think Michelle was trying to push it in a way that neither Barack or her brother, Craig, was willing to go. I thought that was interesting. Mm-hmm. And it was about an emotional...
Was it emotional intelligence?
Intelligence. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Well, she was specifically talking, because they talked about their emotions and how they would deal with their emotions with other men in a problem-solving way. Like, I'm feeling this. Okay, well, what's causing that, and how can you solve that? And she was wanting them basically to do what girls do, basically, which is, what am I feeling? That's valid. You're right to feel that. That's kind of what she seemed to be aiming for. She was talking about their internal emotional
intelligence. Like, like you said. And it's not wrong, but it's also, I think it's more dynamic than emotion. And I think that's the thing that has frustrated me, because I've had these conversations, and as a married man, and I think you probably can relate to this, this is one of those distinct differences between men and women, how we process emotions and how we think about our own emotions, and how we communicate those.
Sure.
Men don't deny that they have them, but in how we think through them and how we are communicating our feelings to others, and when we communicate our feelings to others, and what we think is of importance to communicate and what we think is not important to communicate, those are not universally agreed upon. Mm-hmm. And I think she was wanting, I want men to be more communicative in this, because this is what I think, honestly, most every woman would have this same kind of thing. I wish my spouse was more communicative regarding their emotions with me. Mm-hmm. But part of the way, I would argue, that's not necessarily wrong, but it's also, you can't expect it to the same degree that women give it.
Yeah. It's just a gender dynamics thing, because I think all men probably, and probably most women have experienced this, but you have some task in front of you where something's gone wrong, tires blown, or, your car just broke down on the side of the highway, you had a flood, whatever. And you're upset and you want to just flip out about this because it's really frustrating, but it doesn't help anything. It doesn't benefit anything to be emotional about it.
Don't worry. I'm not going to do what you all think I'm going to do, which is just flip out!
Put the emotions on the back burner until you deal with the issue, and then you can feel the emotions if it's appropriate.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think that's the more masculine approach, and the more feminine approach is deal with the emotions.
I don't think all men are just stoic in those situations. Lots of times, that there's words that come out of your mouth at times.
Sure, but it's not going to be.
Maybe a hammer gets thrown. I don't know, but there is expressions of frustration and things. I think it's not even that she was talking about. What she is going at, and I understand it to this degree, there is an emotional intelligence of communicating. And when Obama talked about how he kind of learned more about it through reading literature and books and stuff, I think that's more of a key at what she was getting at, as how you communicate yourself. We hear feelings and it's just like emotions, how I'm feeling at the moment. I feel good, I feel bad, I feel indifferent. That's not what she means. And I think that's the confusion there. Because the language is, well, what are you feeling, is more code to like, what are your thoughts and how are you thinking about yourself in relation to whatever emotion is impacting you at that point. Yeah. Men tend to think of it more as like, what is happening to me right now as far as a task or I'm doing, and how am I going at that? Women tend to move more toward the how is that feeling that I'm experiencing now, and how I know myself, and how is that interacting, and how am I expressing myself in that. So it's different, and I think that's why the confusion can happen. Instead of Obama just kind of saying, "Oh yeah, you're right. We just got to figure out how to make guys express their feelings more," he pushed back. I know the joke is that, Michelle wears the pants in the family.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
No, Obama definitely holds his, or Brock definitely holds his own in this.
Yeah, I think that was pretty evident.
Yes.
Yeah, the idea that Michelle was really putting forward, and particularly these two men and how they were raised, was this mentality, and maybe it probably was a thing during when they were raised, but it is that notion of stoicism and we put the emotions away. I don't think that is so much a problem today. And this was a topic about raising today's boys.
Right.
So I don't think that's so much a problem, but to your point, Thomas, I think one of the biggest dangers is trying to teach them through the lens of female emotional processing, when that is inappropriate for who they are.
Well, on the emotional thing, just the way men express emotions is different. For instance, I was thinking about, while I was listening to Michelle and Brack talk, I was thinking about how my dad has expressed his emotions in my life. And yeah, he said he loved me and gave me hugs and stuff, but we didn't ever talk about, how do you feel? I would sometimes talk that way with my mom, but with my dad, it would be something that happened. It would be like, I was playing this stupid little game at church and all the young kids were having to grab a ball and score some point. I don't remember exactly how the game worked, but I grabbed a ball and then a bigger kid came and grabbed the ball out of my hand, and all the dads were ringed around for the next stage in the game. And, I couldn't do anything about this bigger kid stealing the ball out of my hand, but my dad stepped right up and he's like, "Hey, that was his, give it back to him." And just stepped in and made him give it back to me, it wasn't about how he was feeling, except that he was kind of outraged on my behalf, which was, he didn't say it, but I knew it. And it meant a lot to me. This was 20 years ago, and I remember it clear as a day.
Yeah. Really quick, back to the point that I was trying to make earlier, insofar as the difference between the female response and the male response to emotions. The premise of this whole conversation was, especially from Emma, was we raise our girls and we love our boys, and then they, at the get-go, talk about how we've, as a society, done a really good job at raising independent young women. And it's almost like within that context, it's like, okay, we figured out how to do this. Now, how do we do the same thing for the boys? And really, I think that was where Michelle was coming from.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What I felt like there's kind of been from the left for a long time is it's trying to make boys into women.
Yes.
And women into men.
Right. And I think that's the major error. And they even kind of hinted at, role models, or I'm sorry, gender roles. Which that is what has been missing from our culture effectively, is a consistent culture-wide recognition of gender roles.
Yeah.
Now, no culture creates perfect gender roles, and I think part of the pushback and part of the development of feminism was because of a too limited kind of gender role for women in a lot of ways, and maybe even for men.
Well, a lot of the pushback of feminism was based on a genuine issue, which was that a lot of the necessary and valuable female jobs that had existed, laundry, dishes, cooking, suddenly became way easier with ovens and dishwashers and washing machines. And so suddenly women had all this time on their hands, and there were men who were like, no, you stay in the home. And it's like, well, I've got nothing to do. And so feminism was rightly saying, actually, they've got this time on their hands, let them do something with it.
Yeah, there's part of that, but feminism began
it went way beyond that.
Yeah, it began before that.
Yeah.
It did. Yeah. It really, I think, hit a big crux in 1973. This came up in a Sean Ryan podcast recently. The removal of the draft, and then 3 weeks later, the ratification of Roe v. Wade signaled two things. One, men are, your sole point in life is not to protect and defend your home. And two, women, your sole point in life is not to have children.
Yeah.
And be a mother.
There's so many elements to play in this, and they're looking at one aspect of the kind of a big issue that's developed, which is what do we do with
boys falling behind, basically.
Yeah, effectively. Yeah. And one of the biggest things I noticed that was missing, there was no recognition and no talk about spiritual element of us as humans. We know that God is the one who's created us, and he's created us male and female, and that also means that he's given male and female certain attributes, certain roles that they fulfill. Like you just mentioned, childbearing, that's solely for a woman. Being a protector of the home and a guardian and fathers, that's solely for males. And
those are not mere biological materialist factors. Those are spiritual roles that fulfill something deep inside.
Yeah, that's spiritual and both.
They're both.
Both. And the conversation overall, I actually enjoyed it because I felt like, okay, they're not saying crazy off-the-wall things and throwing out just ridiculous anti-men kind of
See, I actually enjoyed it less because of that. I wanted them to say something crazy.
It's like we can actually talk about
I was
solutions
like, oh,
to the same problem for once.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, they're being reasonable. Sorry to jump in, but just to kind of get towards a wrapping up point, one kind of key factor that all three of these people, Craig, Michelle, and Barack, are missing is they're especially Barack is so hesitant to say the thing that he clearly thinks, which is, there's this issue and this is what we need to do about it. And he does that various times on different specific sub-issues. But the thing they're just so unwilling to even talk about, and I guess because they avoid talking about politics in general on this show, is the Democrat Party is the one who has caused most of these issues. Yeah. These issues with the focus on women and the ignoring boys and telling boys they don't matter, basically, which is what has happened, came from the Democrats. And people have been shouting, hey, boys are being left behind. Boys are seeing less and less returns on college. They're seeing lower and lower wages, and compared to women, they're seeing less and less life satisfaction, blah, blah, blah. Shouting about it for at least a decade now. And the only people who would listen were on the right. No one on the left would even hear those people out. And these were not political people until they found that the only people who would listen to them were on the right. And then they were like, well, I guess I'm on the right.
Yeah.
And now the left is finally starting to talk about it. And that's good. I'm glad. At some point, they're going to have to admit, hey, we screwed up here.
Yeah.
I think they are tacitly, some of them.
Yeah, tacitly.
It is, but it's hard. How do you put the toothpaste back in the tube, in a sense? The progressive agenda was this agenda that assumed this false presupposition regarding the nature of humanity in men and women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the oppressor-oppressed mentality.
Right. And so they started from this neo-Marxist kind of view of the sexes. And how do you back away from that? Because what's happening now is it's not a winning formula, at least politically speaking.
Yeah. Mm. Well, and I think the neo-Marxists now in the party are more Marxist than Barack is.
Oh, yeah.
That's a whole nother rabbit trail.
And one last thing I find fascinating, the policies that they support and vote on, they themselves aren't willing to apply to their own families.
Yeah, that was telling for sure. The whole time I was thinking, who am I listening to? Because the way they parent their children is so similar to how I would, but
Yeah.
in the arena, it's like totally different.
Yeah. That was interesting. They were saying a lot of very good things. Like, you know, when we're raising our daughters, we say, this is the rule and you have to obey it, and
set
we'll explain
boundaries.
why, but that's it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's the right way to do it, but they don't behave like that in the rest of their lives. One thing I kept thinking throughout this episode is that this could almost be like a 10-minute clip from Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
He could have covered all the ground they covered, done it better, and then moved on to something else for the rest of the, you know, hour and 20 minutes.
But that's dangerous online male influencer stuff that we don't want boys to listen to.
right.
But at least they're trying.
At least they're trying. Like,
know?
honestly,
Yeah.
kudos for trying. You're still horrible people, but kudos for trying.
I don't care who you are. That's funny right there.
Yeah, all right. I think that's the note to end on.
Yeah. Okay.
We are the Pop Culture Contrarian, Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew. We're brought to you by The Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. Go subscribe to that. And subscribe to the Pop Culture Contrarian on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Hit the bell icon on YouTube so you know when we upload a new video. Leave us a comment. Send us an email at staff@patriotpost.us if you want. And we'll read them. You know, you're telling us to get a job. This actually is a job. Oh, well. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Later.